Hello learners, in this session today we will study the models of planned change for the organization. Before we begin, we need to recap the previous unit, which was organizational change, as both of these units are related and it is a successor unit of the previous one. For organizational change, we understood that it is inevitable change. The companies cannot stop or ignore the change. Change will take place, and this change might be triggered from internal factors like the management, the change in personnel, and it can be the external force as well. For example, the political and legal change, change in customer education, and so on. Now, since the organizations know they have to incorporate change, they have to welcome change, and whether they like it or not, but because this change will change the way how business is done, these organizations must adapt to the new form of change. So there are several models which are used by the organization to plan their change so that it is successful and it is utilized in their organization. So let's start. Let's first understand what do we mean by planned change. So it is the process of preparing an entire organization or a significant part of it to achieve new goals or move in a new direction. This direction can refer to a company's culture, internal structure, process, matrices, and rewards, or any other aspect related to the business. While constant change is the new normal and the best companies embrace it, not all change is planned. On occasion, organization will suddenly have to adapt to a new market demand, unexpected market shift, or heightened competition. Here we can take the example when demonetization was implemented in India. So this change was not planned by the organization but by the government, an external force which has no direct relation with the business functioning yet have a direct impact on business functioning. So on such occasion, when the change is not planned, even then the organization maybe suddenly have to adapt to new market demands. So there was shortage of money supply in the market. There was a shortage of customers because the customers did not have money to spend and they were saving their money to spend on needs rather than their desires and luxuries. So they devised these online payment modes, and that was the time when companies like Paytm, MobiKwik, PayPal all came into picture and they did really well. So it is also worth noting that planning for change and planning for innovation are different. When you are planning for innovation, you have sufficient time to plan each and every step of this process. But since we just now discussed that all changes are not planned for the organization, so when you are planning for change, you have to have plan B. So a planned change is basically a calculated change initiated to achieve a certain desirable output, performance, and to make the organization more responsive to the internal and external demands. So this change enhances employees' communication skill, it enhances technical expertise, it helps in building teams, it helps in restructuring the organization, it helps in introducing new technologies, in introducing new products and services, in challenging the incentive system, in improving employees' welfare measures, and all these things come under the planned change concept. Now, we will be discussing two very popular models of plan change which are still mostly widely used and uh, are preferred by the organization when it comes to incorporating plan change. So the first model is known as system model and the next one is known as live-in model. So we will start with system model first. Let's understand. This model of change, it lays emphasis on the fact that a change must be implemented organization-wide instead of implementing it in piecemeal. So this model actually provides that you need to implement the change to the whole organization. Do not think that focusing on one element of organization or one component of organization you can change the whole scenario. This model provides a whole new dimension to the concept of organization change and describe the role played by 6 interconnected or independent variables. So these variables are people, task, strategy, culture, technology and design. All these factors or variables belong to the organization. Though they are separate, yet they are interconnected or interdependent variables. So, system model says that all these 6 variables should be focused equally for planned change. As you can see here in the diagram, that all these factors are interrelated. When we say interrelated, we mean that each variable has impact of the other variable. Moving ahead, let's understand all these variables one by one. So the first one is people. This variable involves the individuals who work in an organization. This would take into consideration the individual differences in the form of personality, goals, perception, attitude, attribution and their needs or their motives. Since employees are today seen as asset to the organization and because of workforce diversity, people from different country, nationalities and culture are working for one company under one roof. They have different personality, they have different motives, they have different attitudes and perception towards organization and its affairs. So when you are planning a change, you must pay attention to the people. You must pay attention to these individual differences which these employees carry. You cannot manage everyone with one eye. You have to respect the individual differences because in this change process, in this planned change process, if you understand the individual differences and then plan accordingly, then your change will be successful. The second variable is, the second element is task. Task is basically related to the nature of work which an individual handle in the organization. Now the nature of job can be simple, it can be complex, repetitive, novel, unique and standardized. So in order to understand the task, we must understand the intensity of that task, the nature of that work that an individual is doing. So when you are incorporating change, you cannot put aside the task factor. Then the third is the design. This variable refers to the organizational structure itself and also the system of communication, authority and control, the delegation of responsibility and accountability. So when you are planning change, you should pay attention to the style of organization structure your organization has, which further define the system of communication, authority and control. If you have the clarity about the organizational structure, it will further give you the clarity as to how the people in this organization work. Do they communicate through a chain of command? How the authority is distributed? How the delegation of work is done? And how people are perceiving the hierarchy. So it is also important to notice. Another one is strategy. The organizational strategy is the roadmap of action for realizing the future goals, both short-term and long-term in the nature. Strategic planning involves identification of existing resources, a careful assessment of internal strengths and weaknesses, identifying the opportunities in the environment and threats as well for a competitive advantage. So when we look at organizations, even if they are working for the same industry, even if they are the competitors producing same product or service, they will have a different strategy towards their product, towards their business. And this strategy helps us understand how an organization sees itself in short term and long term. So when you are planning change, you must see what kind of strategy the organization values and how you can involve the strategy with the change so that there is no friction of the two and both are hand in hand and help in implementing the change in the organization. The another one is technology. It takes into consideration the advancement in the technology in the field of IT, automation, new methods and techniques for enhancing productivity, introduction of new process and best practices for remaining ahead in the competition. So from here we understand that you cannot ignore the technology because not all the organizations are using advanced technology. They may be changing. If they are planning the change, they must see what level of technology the organization is working upon. The next one is culture. Here we are speaking of the organization culture. So the shared belief, practice, values, norms and expectations of the members of organization. The culture which is created for that organization. How people see change is also part of organization culture. Do they value power? Do they value people? Do they value innovation? Do they value bureaucracy? What kind of culture? Do they value the role or do they value the person? There are several types of cultures, organization culture, which we see in organization. So before planning the change, system model says that you pay due attention to the organization culture. From there you can understand what is the way of working of the people in that organization, how receptive they are towards change, how comfortable they are working in during the change process, and how well they can adapt or adopt the change or the post change situation, because it is the people who will actually work in that change situation. If you are planning a change, let's say you are planning to change the technology, let's say you are planning to upgrade the machines, let's say you are planning to upgrade your production plant, the employees would be working after that change on this new change platform. So it is very important to embrace the organization culture and then strategize the play. the change. So this is about the system. So here you can see that system models see the whole organization as a system which has different variables. Though they are different, yet they are interconnected. You cannot say three variables are important, we will pay attention on those three only and we will ignore the three ones. No, we have to pay attention to all the components of that system, and then only you can plan the change. So these 6 key factors are given by system change model to for managers to pay attention to when they are planning change. As you can read here, all the 6 variables are interrelated and interdependent. For example, a change in organization strategy will lead to a change in the organization structure, devolution of power and authority. This will ultimately be having an effect on the people of the organization in terms of change in their behavior or attitude. Moreover, organizational redesign may result in a cultural change by either modifying or reinforcing the existing culture. So, the system approach of change management is a very useful model which helps the manager or employee in understanding that a change can never be implemented partly, rather it must be holistic in nature by taking into consideration all the interrelated variables and their influence on each other. Now, moving on to the next model. It is a very popular model, and whenever we are studying change, whenever we are teaching change, we cannot skip Kurt Lewin in addressing change. So his model on change is a 3-step change model. Lewin explains that organizations like human beings prefer to stay in a state of equilibrium or a steady state, which is called homeostasis. He observed that the stability of human behavior was based on quasi-stationary equilibrium, supported by a large force field of driving and restraining forces. This observation of his gave rise to the theory of force field analysis. However, here we will focus on the change model. So Kurt Lewin introduced the 3-step change model. He was a social scientist who view behavior as a dynamic balance of forces working in opposite directions. Driving forces facilitate change because they push the employee in the desired direction, whereas restraining forces, they hinder change, they resist change because they push the employee in the opposite direction. Therefore, these forces must be analyzed, and this model can help shift the balance in the direction of planned change. So what we understand from here is that if you want to change the behavior of the employee, there will be 2 types of forces which will be working. One force is known as driving force, which will facilitate change, and the another is known as restraining force, which will hinder the change or resist the employee to accept the change. So you need to find the balance between these 2 forces to incorporate a planned change. These are the 3 stages of change model. The first one is known as unfreeze. Then comes the second stage where the change is introduced, and the third one is refreeze. Let's understand each one of the stage one by one. So Lewin identifies human behavior with respect to change as a quasi-stationary equilibrium. This state is a mindset, a mental and physical capacity that can be almost absolutely reached, but it is initially situated so that the mind can evolve without actually attaining that capacity. For example, a contagious disease can spread rapidly in a population and resist initial measures to contain the escalation. Eventually, through medical advancement, the disease can be treated and virtually disappear from the population. So, he argues that changes follows similar resistance. Therefore, we must agitate the equilibrium state in order to instigate a behavior that is open to change. Even suggest that an emotional stir-up may disturb the group dynamics and forces associated with self-righteousness among the individual group members. Certainly, there are a variety of ways to shake up the present status quo, and you will want to consider whether you need change in an individual or as in a company amongst a group of people. So this stage says that when you are ready to introduce a change, so there is a stage which takes place even before the change has been introduced, where you have to, through counseling, through one-to-one sessions, you have through feedbacks, through discussions, you have to prepare the employees ready for the change. If you randomly, one Monday morning you come to the office and you say, okay, we are changing our software from today and you have to work on this new software. It is not similar to the previous one. Please start working. The employees will be in a state of shock. You did not give them time before introducing this change. They were not ready for it. Their mindset was not ready for it. So what you are going to observe is resistance. I'm sorry. They will resist this change. The change you incorporated. Since the employees are resisting the change, what is the purpose of introducing change? Because now they are not going to work. Even if they try to work, they will be demotivated. So the first stage is pre-change stage, which is called unfreeze. First, you unfreeze their mind, prepare them, counsel them, and they are ready to understand the requirement of the change, the need of the change. You have to connect that need with their motives so that they are mentally ready to adapt to the change situation. The second stage, so here you can read that actions within this unfreeze stage may be first determining what needs to change. So you have to survey your company and understand why do you need a change, and you have to then ensure that your management supports you because you're gonna need many resources for that change. So is the manager ready? Then create the need for change. So now here comes the main point, that you have to communicate the need of the change and associate it with long-term vision of the company so that employee can relate with the need of the change. Then the second main step, which is when you have introduced the change. So once you have unfrozen the people, it is the time you implement the change. Organizational change is complex. It is tough. So executing a well-planned change process does not guarantee predictable results. Therefore, the manager must prepare a variety of change options from the planned change process to trial and error. And with each attempt at change, you have to examine closely as to what worked for you, what did not work for you, and what parts of the change were resisted by the employees. Now, during this evaluation process, there are two important drivers which can tell you whether this change will be a success or will be a flop show. One is information flow and the second one is leadership. Information flow refers to sharing the information across multiple levels of the organizational hierarchy, making available a variety of skill and expertise, and coordinating the problem solving across the company. And second is, you will need leadership. You will need a leader who will influence the other people, guide them throughout, and a well-planned change process because require a defined vision and motivation, and a leader can help you with that. So, during the change process, companies should communicate widely and clearly about the planned implementation, benefit, and who is affected. Promote and empower action. The company shall encourage the employees to get involved proactively with the change and support managers in providing daily and weekly direction to staff and involve others as much as possible. So your team should feel that they are also part of this change process. Their contribution is addressed, acknowledged and welcomed by the organization. So here you will start working as a team and you will get very less resistance from the people. And then comes the final stage. Since the change has been introduced, it is prevailing in the system, it is the time to again refreeze the state. You have to confirm that the change which has been introduced is permanent and people have accepted it. The goal is for the people involved to consider this new state as the new status quo. So they adapt completely to it and they no longer resist these forces. So the group norms, activities, strategies and processes are transformed as per the new state and employees should adapt easily to it. Because without appropriate steps that sustain and reinforce the change, the previously dominant behavior tends to reassert itself. So it might happen that if you do not pay enough attention to refreeze state, do not prepare the employees mentally and make them believe they have adapted the change and this change is for their good, they may start resisting it after some time. So in refreeze stage, the company should tie the new change into the culture by identifying the support and the change barriers. So you have to identify factors which can help in maintaining the change status and you should avoid the impact of change barriers. The company should develop and promote ways to sustain the change long term. So you ensure leadership and management support, you establish feedback process and you create a reward system. Also, the company can offer training, support and communication to the long-term and short-term users of that change. It should promote the formal and informal method and remember the various ways that employees learn. So this way you can confirm the success of a planned change. So this model, change model of Lewin, provide us an intuitive and fundamental understanding of how changes occur in context of social behavior observed at an individual and collective level within a group. It is a reminder that when modern day change management frameworks are not working for specific use cases and business needs, these fundamental helps you in understanding the social behavior in light of change. So in this chapter we understood two models of change. One was system model, which took the idea of holistic change approach, and the another one is Lewin stage model, which says that it is a process and there are stages which you should very wisely work upon to make your planned change a success. So with this we end today's session. Let's meet in another session. Thank you.